Hello and welcome to Listen Up. I'm Alex Coma. He's Joey Francali. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to start off with our top 5 topics. On kind of a discouraging note, the Hokies dropped another embarrassing game to an inferior ACC opponent, this time losing to Maryland at home on Senior Day. What do you make of this team at this point? And do they deserve to get to the ACC championship game, which, believe it or not, is still a possibility?
Still possible. Here's the thing. The whole deserve, it's so hard to, it's really hard to quantify what that word means in this regard because, honestly, if you're picking the best two teams to play in the ACC championship, which is what it should be, clearly nobody in the Coastal deserves to be in it. And if Duke were to lose to UNC to end the season when it's on the line, would they then deserve to go? No. With Georgia Tech? I mean, when you look at the fact that Tech could end up defeating all but one Coastal Division foe, and that would be the reason why they'd win some of these crazy tiebreakers, to me, that's a reason. But I digress, because I'd rather not talk about deserving to go to the ACC championship and more about the inferiority, really, of this Tech team to play with any sort of consistency. And it's slightly embarrassing. It is, because you have to find a way to show up for home games. And this week on Tech Talk Live, actually, Willie Byrne kind of admitted that the team plays down to their opponents, which I appreciate the candidness from Willie, but at the same time, it's pretty discouraging when a player on your own team admits to playing down to their opponents. And, you know, I love Frank Beamer, and I want him to stay till whenever, and I'm not asking for him to get fired at all, but it is the coach's job, all the coaches, to prepare your team for that week's opponent and make sure that it's in their head that that game on the schedule is the most important, and it's the only one that you should be thinking about. And to me, if a player is saying that they aren't living or aren't playing up to their opponents, that is a situational, or I guess I should say it's an institutional failure that begins with the coaches.
Yeah, and I think it was Andy Bitter that wrote about it this week. But it's that Frank Beamer, he has some very defined characteristics. Everyone describes him as that guy that's literally always steady, no matter the situation. That's very valuable, say, when you lose, in the Orange Bowl by 1 billion points and then you're trying to come back the next season. Or it's very valuable, say, when the team is down late in the fourth quarter. Frank Beamer, he's going to be nice and steady. They can come back and they can win against Miami in 2011. But it's a little less valuable, say, when you need to emphasize the urgency in this final game. Tech has been handed so many opportunities to control its own destiny in the Coastal Division, and time after time after time, it seems like they just don't take it seriously. It seems like Frank Beamer always talks about making the ACC championship game, winning the Coastal Division, and when they have the opportunity to seize the reins in the division, which they were gift-wrapped with the way that Miami came out and laid an egg against them, and the offense came together to win that game, and they sort of turned it down. And the seniors said it. They were disappointed seeing Maryland, storm the field from the sidelines on their senior day. And it's like, if you can't get them hyped up for that, what can you do it for?
It's your senior day.
It's their last game in Lane Stadium for a lot of guys who are going to be regarded very highly in the annals of Tech history, whether it's Logan Thomas or James Gale or Derek Hopkins, Jack Tyler. These are guys that we're going to look back on a couple of years ago and say, how the heck didn't they do more? What was happening that they lose in their senior day to an inferior team? It comes down to the fact that Bud Foster's defense, for whatever reason, is ill-equipped to defend running quarterbacks. We saw it with Rakeem Cato a little bit. We really saw it with C.J. Brown, who really hadn't done much before playing the Hokies.
He's not even a running quarterback.
He's not. And he went out there and he ran for 122 yards. He sure looked like one. A lot of times, it wasn't a factor of him making a crafty move. It was a factor of there just being a lot of wide-open field in front of him. There was good coverage, so he just took the smart option, and he would run for 10 yards every play. So it was a little bit of that, and it was a little bit of the fact that for all that it seemed the offense learned in the Miami game, whether it was the excellent blocking, the reliance on the run game, they sort of just forgot about all that and then went back to exactly what they were doing, dropping back time and again. And while the offensive line, I think, deserves criticism for not playing well, they allow 7 sacks, I think Logan also has to take a few as well, because once you see that Andre Monroe is getting the better of your freshman left tackle, maybe let's get the ball out in space a little bit.
Gotta have a clock.
And he didn't.
Ahead.
I don't think he did.
Okay, I've got a couple more things to say about this. One, part of the reason why the ACC Coastal Division is a joke and why maybe urgency isn't on the mind is that really everything is still in front of them, and everything they needed to happen going into the Maryland game still has to happen because Miami did not beat Duke, because Duke beat Miami Tech still has to win against UVA, which they were going to no matter what always, and they still need Duke to lose a game. And they had to have Duke lose, even if they, Miami gift wrapped, as you said, which they did, a pretty lousy game, and Tech took it, but Tech still needed help from Duke.
Yeah.
And so it's just crazy to me to look at this, that essentially the Maryland game doesn't matter. It doesn't, but it's embarrassing to look at. Couple things. Since 2001, this is the first time since 2001 that Tech has lost their final 2 home games of the year. That is an embarrassment. That is a joke. Grant Knoll was the quarterback then. Grant Knoll and Logan Thomas was supposed to be a first-round pick. That's an embarrassment. Secondly, our lovely class of 2014 is the first class since the 99 class to see their first home loss, JMU, and their last home loss as well, Maryland. Pretty depressing. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, honestly, it frustrates me because we've seen it, they've got it, and they just didn't show it. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're losing depth in the secondary, and that sort of has a trickle-down effect. You see it, you don't really think about it. You think, oh, hey, with Brandon Faison and Kendall Fuller, they've got plenty of depth if they lose Kyle and Antone. But then, when you start thinking about it, oh, who's going to play on special teams when those guys can no longer play because they're starting? And I think it trickles down, and I think you saw that in the second punt return touchdown that they've allowed this season. I think you saw that in a lot of the tackles that they were trying to make in the defensive backfield, and they couldn't necessarily. That's nothing against a guy like Darian Green, who's had to play more. He's a redshirt freshman, and it's clearly not the same as being a freshman when you're a member of the Fuller family. So, and now you see that Kyle Fuller, he's having surgery. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. He may never play again for the Virginia Tech Hokies, which I think is a real shame. So, I think it just kind of sucks. It was really poor timing, and it coincides with, I think, a lack of urgency from the coaching staff. And like you said, I don't want to see Beamer go anywhere, but you just need to accept that this is what he's going to give you. He's going to give you a 10-win season, but he's also going to give you 2 dumb losses every year. That's just what it's going to be.
1-3 without Kyle, too.
Yeah.
1-3. I mean, you can point to that.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on now. We're going to continue to talk about football, move on to the NFL. The Patriots-Panthers game on Monday Night Football ended up being an instant classic, but it had its fair share of controversy. What did you take away from the game? What did it tell you about both teams? And what did you make of the end of the game, that controversial non-call?
All right, well, I hated it because for once I was rooting for the Patriots. Normally I root against the Patriots. Patriots are terrible. I pick them and pick them. What do they do but disappoint me once again by even being in the position to have to drive to win that game? Shane Vereen, if all he could have done is just catch a dumb swing pass at the end of the game, they would have been taking their shots from like the 13-yard line instead of the 25. But I digress. I think the end of the game was stupid. I appreciate that the refs didn't want to affect the end of the game by throwing a flag, but at the same time, they can talk all they want about how that wasn't defensive pass interference. And I think that there is an argument to be made that it wasn't, but it was defensive holding, and there is nothing in the rule book that says that the ball has to be catchable to call defensive holding.
Correct.
So while it's not going to seal a win for the Patriots, it's not going to put the ball on the 1, that's a first down, and that's one more shot for Tom Brady to win the game. So I didn't really like that. I appreciate that they wanted to swallow the whistle, but why even throw the flag in the first place at this point? So I really didn't like that. I think it did show that the Panthers, specifically Cam Newton, may have a little bit of something. But it also, I think, shows that these Patriots...
A little bit of something.
I'm just going to say...
2 key wins back-to-back against...
Well, one of which came against a very hobbled Aqib Talib and Alfonso Denard. So let's calm down with our jumping all over them just yet.
Okay.
But I think that they showed a little more, and I think they deserve to be taken seriously in the NFC, whereas the Patriots, I think, shouldn't be too discouraged. This is a flawed team, but it still played pretty well against a very good defense.
Okay. This is what I take away from the game. Panthers, as I said last week, are the second best team in the NFC. They have now beaten the 49ers and the Patriots in back-to-back weeks. And not only that, but before that, they had won 4 games in a row where they weren't even within 2 touchdowns of the teams that they were playing. It's a dominant defense. Thank goodness Johnson didn't get hurt there. I thought that Patriots player, whatever, you remember Karate Kid sweep the leg? He swept the leg on Charles Johnson. That would have been awful. So what I took away is that the Patriots, again, like you said, they're a flawed team. They're going to be in every game. They're going to make it to the playoffs, and it's just going to be about whether or not the people around Tom Brady can make some catches at the end of the game. But the Panthers deserve to win that game. I mean, the Patriots had to go 52 seconds or whatever it was all the way down the field to score a touchdown and Cam Newton put on an excellent 4-minute drill,
Yeah.
and which really went about 4.5, 4:45 for him. And the Panthers, if you watch that game, if you watch the whole game, there's no way you came away from that saying that the Patriots got robbed.
Oh, yeah.
You would have said, maybe they got crushed at the end by that call, but the Panthers definitely deserved to win the game. And for the end of the game, I'm with you. I think that there's definitely a case for defensive pass interference and defensive holding. That puts the ball on the 13-yard line. That really only ups the percentage-wise, like 5 to 8% for the Patriots on that next play, although with Tom Brady, who knows. But for me, I think the whole entire play rests on Gronkowski. Because if Gronkowski doesn't continue to glide towards the back of the end zone and just fights through what Kuechly was doing, then you're going to get the call. And you see that even when players aren't hugging a guy, if they just try to fight back for an underthrown ball, they get that call 9 times out of 10, and I think he gets it as well. But he floats to the back of the end zone, doesn't make an effort to come back for it, and because of that, I understand why they picked it up. I do, and obviously I was a little biased because that won me the week and pick 'em. But I really thought it was a good pickup, and I thought it was justice for the 49ers Saints game and the awful call that went against the 49ers in that game.
Well, I think that, too, what bothered me with that play is that Gronkowski, I think, realized his mistake, and you can see him if you watch his feet really closely. He's planting his feet like he's about to jump forward for the ball, but he didn't even do that. If he'd done that, maybe he can sell it a little bit.
If he does it, you sell the call, you're getting it.
Yeah, and Kuechly said that after the game. He was just like, well, they're willing to let you get away with a little holding, and I think that's stupid, but, whatever. As you said, it was really, when you look at it, the Patriots' decision to kick a field goal on the 6-yard line on that previous drive that did them in. Every number suggests you go for it on 4th down in that situation. Worst case scenario, you make the Panthers try and go 94 yards. I think that that's really, if you want to pick out something, obviously it doesn't have the controversial call. That's the reason the Patriots won, which is unusual from a guy as aggressive as Bill Belichick.
Sure, but I think you give credit again to the Panthers' defense
for holding them, and then for Newton for coming right back. Yep, I agree. All right, moving on to some football that's, let's say, less exciting. The NFC East. It is a huge mess right now. The Redskins are imploding. Dallas constantly shooting itself in the foot. Philly has the lead right now. The Giants are kind of surging. Who do you think ends up winning it? Could it really be the 6-5 Eagles?
I think it could. I think everything's starting to go their way now. Nick Foles is obviously grasping the offense, and the offensive line somehow, I don't know. I never know how these things happen in the NFL. Just one year you have the worst offensive line in the world, and then the next year it's like, whoa, suddenly.
Or you could be the Steelers and you just always have the worst offensive line in the world.
Fair enough. But my thing is that I don't know if I see Dallas just because of the way they do things. The Giants are surging. And I think that should be talk because we know how talented this team is. And we know they've been there before, and they certainly still have a lot of self-confidence. As much as you want to say you don't like Tom Coughlin or whatever, that's a good coach. He's won 2 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. I think that they have a chance just because they're playing good football right now. And the NFC East, they still get to play all these guys a lot more. They haven't even played the Redskins once yet. Yeah. So that's essentially 2 wins right there for the Giants, and they're right back in the thick of things. But watching the Eagles this past weekend pretty much destroy the Redskins, even though the Washington kind of made a comeback. I don't know, that offense is really good. If LaShawn stays healthy, he's the best rusher.
A little bit of worry about
I know
that.
You do. You have to. And he went out with the hamstring for a little bit, but if he stays healthy, I mean, that rushing attack is going to be so good, and it just makes everything wide open because the Redskins had to push up against the box, which everyone is going to have to do if LaShawn continues to be LaShawn, and then it really makes it a lot easier for Foles. I mean, we remember that last year with the Redskins. They could run the ball well, and so things were wide open for Griffin. He was making passes to dudes that had no one within 10 yards of him, and that's what it felt like with Foles as well. So I think it's a mess. Honestly, I would go Philly or the Giants. The Cowboys just, I mean, it's just hard to put any faith in them.
Yeah, we pretty much agree there. I think that for everything that Dallas does well on offense, it's sort of counteracted by all the things they do really badly on defense.
And Sean Lee's hurt now.
And how bad has Morris Claiborne been?
They
traded up to get him, and that is looking awful embarrassing right about now. So I agree. I never have believed in Dallas, even when they were playing, kind of well. I always sort of believed that this is what they do because we've learned that while Jason Garrett is the coach, this is kind of what you're going to get. And so I would focus on Philadelphia. The Giants, I think, are kind of a ruse. I think a lot of their games recently have not only come against bad teams, but bad teams playing their backup quarterbacks.
You're right.
Which has been a huge benefit for them.
You're right.
While I think that still is going to build their confidence, Eli Manning, even while they're winning, is just turnover machine right now, leading the league in interceptions. And so I wonder whether it will actually carry over once you start to play teams that have a little bit of talent, have their starting quarterback, and the fact that they just still can't run the ball. Poor guy David Wilson, he doesn't seem to have been the solution. It's a new guy every week, and
Pretty
so
much.
I don't know how much confidence you can have in them. I think the Eagles will take it, and I don't think it will be very close, honestly.
Okay.
They look like the best team. Maybe they'll lose badly in the first round of the playoffs, but, against this competition, sure.
Here's the thing. With my last thing will be that neither Philly nor the Giants have really played anyone good recently. I mean, the Philly torched the Raiders. They kind of demolished the Redskins, but then almost let them come back in the game. I mean, Philly should be a little bit worried about
they've done twice.
Yeah, a little worried about the fact that they get up 24-0 on a team and then almost let them come all the way back.
Yep.
I don't know. The NFC East sucks. It's awful.
Well said.
All right, let's talk about the basketball. The basketball.
The basketball.
The NBA, the Eastern Conference Atlantic Division. I bet you don't know which one that is. It's terrible right now. They've lost 14 straight games as a division. Who comes out on top? And is anyone a real threat to the big guns of the East?
Well, here's what's funny right now is Philadelphia, a team that a lot of people thought would be very last, is actually leading this division, and they're leading it at 5-7
With Toronto.
Yeah,
I mean,
with Toronto.
really good.
Yeah. So it has just been a mess, even worse than the NFC East, I'd wager to say. I think a lot of people, myself included, expect the Nets to not necessarily be dominant, but to compete every once in a while, and now Jason Kidd is kind of feeling like a mid-season firing candidate, as much as it pains me to say that, because I love the guy, but maybe he shouldn't be a coach right now. So I think that, a lot of what they're contingent on doing is sort of pounding the ball inside and getting that quality defense from Kevin Garnett, and that just hasn't been there. Garnett has barely had any offensive production. He's had one or two games where they hit the mid-range jumper with some consistency.
But he's old.
He's old, and
He's
it just hasn't happened. And that's really
So
what
is
it comes
Paul
down
Pierce.
to for that team. And really, when you look at the rest of the competition, it's this mishmash of Rudy Gay and DeMar DeRozan in Toronto, which I just think in no way will work. And Dwayne Casey, I think, is going to get fired. He's not the favorite of the new GM that just came in there. I think that's kind of a mess. The Boston doesn't want to win, and yet they kind of keep accidentally doing it. And so, and really, and New York, meanwhile, last year they at least had an identity as an offense. We're an offense, we're going to score a bunch. This year they're not even doing that, and they certainly can't play defense. So I just don't know what to think. I think it'll probably be the Nets eventually, but my God, what a train wreck.
I don't have a clue. I really don't, because you want to lean on Brooklyn and New York, but things that people weren't talking about before the season have suddenly come out. New York looks like a mess.
Oh,
I mean,
and
the
Carmelo
Knicks
talking about the offseason already?
I mean,
it's November, dude.
They look like a mess. Carmelo really is the only good player on that team right now. JR is not fully back. Amari Stoudemire is not even a shell of his. He's not a person. He's not a person anymore. Amari is not even there. He's a ghost at this point. I don't trust New York in the slightest. And Brooklyn is old. I mean, they're just really old. You're putting all your eggs in the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry basket. Darren Williams hasn't been that good. Sean Livingston has been their best point guard this year. Sean Livingston, and he's been good. I'll give you that, but he's been their best point guard. That's not good for the team. I don't trust Toronto. I think they trade Rudy Gay before the end of the year is up. Philly wants to lose, just like Boston. Neither of them are going to do anything to try to get better as a team. So maybe they just expand by cutting this division away. It's just like whatever they.
Never mind that these are some of the biggest media markets in the entire sport.
Yeah,
New
but
York
somehow
and Philly and
I'm not
Boston.
sure. Obviously, I haven't thought this out yet. But somehow we're gonna put them on like an island, like Florida, and we're just gonna.
They'll all just
cut
play each
Florida
other.
off.
Yeah,
And just
okay.
kind of float off towards Africa or something.
God, good plan.
Yeah, that's my idea.
All right, staying within basketball, but turning to good basketball players at this point. In the college basketball season, everyone was immediately excited about Andrew Wiggins, but some other promising freshmen have sort of stolen the spotlight in the area going. How much of the likes of Jabari Parker, Aaron Gordon, and Dante Exum impressed you so far?
I'll be brief about this. One, I am not off the Andrew Wiggins train yet. That guy's got such a smooth stroke. Everyone got mad at him in the Kentucky game for getting 22 points and 8 rebounds when he was in foul trouble. Give me a break. Sorry that he wasn't.
I also must note I could watch him do his spin move just all day. Nothing else.
Like a mid-range jumper, I've never seen a more pretty. It looks like Len Bias, honestly. Len Bias this week, though, he would have turned 50 this week. It's just straight up, and it's beautiful. So I like Wiggins still a lot. And the other guy that I've really gotten to see that I can comment on is Jabari Parker. Dude's so athletic. He blocks everyone, and he's got an offensive game as well. He runs the floor. He doesn't look anything like what Duke normally puts out there in terms of he's actually like exciting to watch play basketball. And so, yeah, I would say Jabari looks really, really good. I haven't gotten to see Aaron Gordon yet, and I really want to watch him play because I've heard great things about him. And Arizona on the West Coast, my bedtime. So
I've watched a little Aaron Gordon, and he's not really blown me away necessarily, but I think there's sort of Wiggins fatigue already, and I think that's the reason that people have been so willing to jump on board Jabari Parker, even though he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated at, like 16. So I think it's funny that we've made it all the way back around now in the hype machine. But he has been as good as advertised. You're absolutely right. Dante Exum is another guy that I think is at least worth talking about. The NFL draft scouts are just raving about this guy, but it's not really showing up in the numbers quite yet. And he's going to be, I think, one of those guys that only stays a year, even though he could probably use some more to actually polish and have athletic skill sets other than just being able to jump real good, which is kind of all he can do right now. But it's still really fun to watch. I love it when we have a great freshman class, and this is probably one of the best ones we've had in a couple of years.
Agreed. Julius Randle as well. Didn't mention him here, but I watched that Kentucky game. 27 points and 14 rebounds against Michigan State. I mean,
there's a reason they were number one.
Yeah, he's great. And if we're talking about not freshmen, but young guys still, Marcus Smart had a great game the other day.
Well, and Durant calling him NBA ready already, and I completely agree.
He was NBA ready last year, obviously. Yeah. It was just a question of polishing, fine-tuning. So he'll be interesting as well. All right, let's get to pick 'em real quick. I'm up 5-3. Thanks, Carolina. Really appreciate it. Alex is going to try to get back into it, but obviously we know that's not going to happen. All right, let's start with the NFL. Broncos-Patriots Sunday night. It's part 8 or whatever it is now.
Of the Manning-Brady
yes,
duel.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a hyped-up game, and we realize that both of these teams are teams with flaws, but when you break it right down, the Broncos were able to do a lot of offensive things against a very good Chiefs defense. Made him look kind of silly at times. I just think that Peyton, even if he's hobbled, has more receiving options consistently than Tom Brady does. It could be a shootout, but I say Denver wins.
There's no doubt about that, but I think New England's angry, and if we remember the last time New England was angry, they scored 1 million points during the 2009 season. So I'm going to go with the Patriots just because I think they'll bounce back after the Carolina loss.
All right, in college football, a big Big 12 road matchup. Baylor goes to Oklahoma State.
I think at some point we see Baylor's flaws. I just don't think it's this week, so I'm going to go with the Bears.
Especially because Oklahoma State is such a similar team. They haven't really done it with the passing game. They've more done it with the running game this year, but they are still, they run a lot of the same concepts. They're go, all offense. In that, Baylor's just better. Give me the Bears.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about the college football weekend. Arizona State versus UCLA.
Well, Arizona State, I think, is an interesting team in a lot of ways. It's sort of on the West Coast. Nobody really knows what they're doing. It's a tough road game whenever you go to Los Angeles, but they're higher ranked in the polls than the Bruins, and I think they deserve to be. I'll say they get the big Pac-12 win.
You guys remember Michael Vick? He played Virginia Tech. He was coached in Atlanta by Jim Mora Jr., so I'm going with UCLA.
First he's got a Mormon friend, and now Michael Vick somehow.
That's right.
In the NBA, Timberwolves at Rockets.
I'm gonna go with the Rockets. I saw the Timberwolves lose to the Wizards this week, so that's enough for me.
That they did, but how fun are they? Kevin Love, even if sometimes he can't really get back in the transition defense, he has still been really good offensively. I will say they win this one over struggling Dwight Howard.
All right, and Colorado versus the Kings.
Well, it's really a case of the young versus the established in the Western Conference. Avalanche have sort of kept up that early season momentum, but I believe in Jonathan Quick and the Kings.
I agree. The Avs have been shaky a little bit this last week and a half or so I'll go with the Kings too.
All right, we're going to send you to Thanksgiving break with our quick hits. We're starting things off with Dwayne Wade. He just sold a sitcom about his life titled 3 the Hard Way, and it will star a character named Daryl Wade. Will you be tuning in?
Do we have no more original ideas, Hollywood? Nothing?
Very, very clearly not. And I really I think it's a real missed opportunity to have misspelled Daryl Wade's name. It's spelled correctly, which is a far cry from Dwayne.
Daryl, like W-A-I-D?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, that would have been good. See, that's an original idea, Hollywood.
So, yeah.
All right, the Blackhawks are selling melted ice from the rink during their... What the hell? during the Stanley Cup season. Does this seem worth $99 to you?
I mean, I love hockey, and I love the Stanley Cup, but I think you have to have some sort of mental disability to pay $99 for melted ice.
No. The answer is no.
The answer is no. A photo of Tim Tebow was included along with some suspicious white powder in a letter sent to the mayor of Jersey City, New Jersey, causing an evacuation of City Hall. Should this be the standard procedure for all future Tim Tebow sightings?
I'm so glad that we didn't make it through another week without Tim Tebow. We're keeping him alive. It's like he's still with us.
My favorite thing is that this crazy guy sent both a picture of Tebow and some psalms and religious verses.
Naturally.
But I really think that more so than the suspected anthrax, it was Tebow that scared him away. Run! He's so bad.
A high school girls basketball coach in Mississippi was recently forced to resign after allegedly biting one of his players on the face as part of yelling at her for a bad play. Does that seem reasonable to you?
Well, I realize now when I phrased it that when you say seem reasonable to you, it makes it sound like biting on the face seems reasonable.
Totally cool.
I was referring more to the firing, in which case it is.
Oh.
But hey, maybe if you need a good bite on the face, that would do it.
Sure sounds like Mississippi to me.
Yes, it does. I'm just a little surprised it wasn't Florida, honestly. But moving on, last one, Tracy McGrady was spotted on NBA TV a couple nights ago wearing pants that seemed to be roughly 10 times too large for his legs. But now he claims that the reason for that was that he was forced to wear a pre-ordered suit for one Shaquille O'Neal instead. Do you believe T-Mac, or does the man just need a tailor?
That man don't need no tailor. He's the best shooter in the history of the NBA.
No, he really needs a tailor. Did you see him? They were like covered his shoes. It's a little ridiculous, man. Come on.
All right, thanks for watching Listen Up this week. Have an enjoyable Turkey Day. We'll be back after the break on Listen Up.